Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ormond Beach, a welcoming community of compassion and acceptance. I am Ludi Goodson and I invite you to our virtual service this morning. The in-person discussion group and worship services usually held in our building have been suspended until further notice. We will continue to hold discussion group at 9:15 a.m. and worship at 10:30 a.m. every Sunday on Zoom until it is safe to hold large group functions again in our building. Reverend Kathy Ricky is our minister, and she will be providing our service today. If you are joining us for the first time this morning, we extend a special welcome to you. We invite you to stay on the Zoom meeting after the service concludes, when many in attendance enjoy a bit of conversation with each other. We would enjoy meeting you if you would like to introduce yourself at that time, and ask you also to check out our website at uuormond.org and look for the welcome button under the picture of our minister, Reverend Kathy. There you will find how to get further connected with our congregation and learn more about Unitarian Universalism. Now, on to announcements for the good of our community. Tomorrow evening, Monday, October 19th at 6:30 p.m., the Faith Community Problems Assembly will meet via Zoom, and we need as many members of our congregation as possible to attend this important event, which will include a candidate forum on affordable housing. An email will go out later today with the Zoom link information. We now have a bi-weekly Zoom gathering called Honoring Our Lament, and all are welcome to join in naming the challenges, the sorrows, the worries, and the cares that these unprecedented times bring into our lives. The next session will be October 20th at 5:30 to 7 p.m. and the Zoom link information is on the website. And in this week's e-news, contact Reverend Kathy with any questions. Another announcement is about mailing in your ballot. We know you have some concerns about doing this, and mail-in ballots, we want to remind you, may be delivered during early voting and placed in a secure ballot box at specific locations, and many sites have drive-up services. At volusiaelections.org, you can find the list of locations in Ormond and Daytona Beach. The mail-in ballot box collection is not available on November 3rd, Election Day. Now, volunteers have offered to come to your home and pick up your mail-in ballot and deliver the ballot to an early voting site. If you find that you have waited until Election Day to deliver your ballot, then the ballot must be delivered to the supervisor of elections in DeLand. Now, volunteers will do this as needed. They are Catherine Neal and Tom and Julie Hilburn, and their phone numbers are in the directory. In the absence of a physical passing of the offering basket at this time, we invite you to make donations through our website. We invite your support in honor of our virtual worship services or in financial support of the congregation through the donation button, which allows you to use PayPal or credit card. But for larger donations or pledge payments, we ask that your checks be sent to UUCOB at 56 North Halifax in Ormond. We very much appreciate your contributions. From you I receive together we share, and from this we live. At the sound of the chime, our service begins.
Our call to worship this morning, the words of Annie Dillard. We are here to abet creation and to witness to it, to notice each thing so each thing gets noticed. Together we notice not only each mountain shadow and each stone on the beach, but we notice each other's beautiful face and complex nature, so that creation need not play to an empty house.
As I light this chalice, I invite you to light one too, if you have one nearby at home. And remind us all that I light this chalice, a single flame which I hope kindles many hearts this morning. Let this flame unite us in virtual community and remind us of each other's presence as we worship from many singular rooms. Let this flame inspire in us faith and courage to face these difficult times. Let this flame be our guide in making sense of a chaotic world, and let its light show us the way to beloved community both near and far. Please join me in reciting our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of our congregation, and service is our aim, to dwell together in peace and freedom, to seek the truth, and to help one another. These are our goals. Reverend Kathy will give us the joys and concerns.
Please send well wishes to Marilyn Doctor, who fell and suffered injuries to her face and head. She's doing okay, in some pain, and recovering at home. And then finally, as many of you have probably already heard, some sad news. Charlie Ferguson, our much-loved member and former trustee of our congregation, died early last week. He had been ill for several months. We have few details surrounding the cause of his death or plans for memorial service. They're not known at this time, but will be shared as they emerge. And for all those joys and concerns which remain on our hearts silently this morning, will you pray with me? Spirit of life and love, bless us this day with the understanding that woe and joy are woven fine, and that whosoever brings us tears also brings us great joy, that the hours before dawn are often the darkest. Spirit of life and love, bestow upon us the peace which passes our understanding, so that hope, faith, and love may fill our hearts and still our worrying minds. Spirit of life and love, in this difficult time, bid us to strive for our best selves each day. Let our striving be for justice, equity, and compassion in our human relations. Inspire us to create beloved community in ever-widening spheres. Spirit of life and love, we give thanks for this precious day and for all that is our life, for we know that our life is a gift, freely given, unbidden, and unearned. We give joyous praise for this, our one precious life. Amen.
And Reverend Kathy will now give us the introduction to the homily for today. Mary Oliver, a tribute to one who listened.
Thank you and good morning. I first have a reading. This appeared in the UU World magazine in the winter of 2010. Mary Oliver contributed this prose poem titled, How I Go to the Woods. Ordinarily, I go to the woods alone, with not a single friend, for they are all smilers and talkers and therefore unsuitable. I don't really want to be witnessed talking to the catbirds or hugging the old black tree. I have my way of praying, as you no doubt have yours. Besides, when I am alone, I can become invisible. I can sit on the top of a dune as motionless as an uprise of weeds until the foxes run by unconcerned. I can hear the almost unhearable sound of the roses singing. If you have ever gone to the woods with me, I must love you very much. So ends the reading. Our worship theme of October is deep listening. And in the resource material for this worship theme, we are reminded that what we listen to becomes who we are. A parable elegantly expresses this. Two people are walking down a city street. One says, "Did you hear that cricket?" The other says, "How can you hear that amid all this noise?" The other replies, "I listen for it." "How can you hear above all this noise?" And the other replies, "You hear what you want to hear. Let me demonstrate." And so the other drops some coins on the ground and they clink faintly. Everyone nearby stops and turns and looks for the fallen coins. Mary Oliver is highlighted as an exemplar of deep listening in this month's worship theme. And indeed, as I think of Oliver as one of creation's spies, sitting at the pond's edge, motionless and calm, like a Buddha observing and listening deeply to a natural world that often eludes the rest of us mere mortals. In a 2015 interview with Krista Tippett, Mary Oliver described the deep listening she did in the woods as listening convivially. Convivial conjures friendly, relaxed, open, cheerful. Oliver was completely in her element among the reeds and the marshes of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Thank goodness, else we would know nothing of grasshoppers that chew side to side instead of up and down, or of egrets whose bamboo legs mimic the familiar reeds of their prey, or of, as she says, lean owls hunkering with their lamp eyes. Born in 1935, Mary Oliver grew up just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. Her home was unsettled and abusive. Her salvation was escaping to nearby woods where she would spend hours building stick and mud forts and writing poetry. In her interview with Tippett, Oliver said that when she was a child, she had a hard time being inside buildings and therefore skipped school a lot. She attended Ohio State and Vassar, but didn't receive a degree. Oliver's greatest influence was Edna St. Vincent Millay. In fact, she worked for Millay's sister in helping to organize the poet's papers. It was during that time that Mary Oliver met Mary Malone Cook, who would become her life partner. Together, they moved to Provincetown, Massachusetts. Within the surrounding Cape Cod landscape, Oliver found unending inspiration for her award-winning poetry, which follows in the Romantic nature tradition. Oliver has been compared to Ralph Waldo Emerson, Marianne Moore, and Walt Whitman. Literary critics say that Oliver was an indefatigable guide to the natural world who brought a vitality to the familiar, investing it with a fresh intensity. I think that this is reflected in my favorite of her poems, Mindful, in which she celebrates the daily presentations of sunlight, water, and grass for the fresh joy they bring her when she loses herself in them over and over again. Other critics say Oliver is among the few American poets who can describe and transmit ecstasy while retaining a practical awareness of the world as one of predators and prey. Oliver knew well that life feeds on life, and did not flinch from that fact. Alligator poem expresses how she herself almost became a meal right here in sunny Florida. Most of Oliver's poetry derives from her experience in nature, but also she was able to express the darkness and difficulty of her life in such poems as Rage and The Journey. In her poem, Wild Geese, Oliver invites us to exchange stories of despair, but at the same time reminds us these stories are time bound, whereas life itself is eternal. We cannot change what is or what has been, but we can find consolation in having a place in this life alongside the wild geese. The Summer Day is probably one of Oliver's best known poems, in which she asks what we plan to do with our one precious life. Beacon Press published her works. She was featured in the UU World and the Ware Lecturer, and she was the Ware Lecturer at the 2006 General Assembly. However, I don't know that Oliver ever claimed Unitarian Universalism as her religion. But the question she poses seems reflective of our practices, theologies, values, and beliefs. We have but one life, and it's short, so pay attention and know that the grasshopper's experience of the sugary frosting on Oliver's plate that summer day is just as important as our own. Mary Oliver found redemption from the harshness of life in the natural world. Let us now find in her poetry our own refuge from the harshness of the life we have experienced as of late. We deserve a break from the concerns of the day, even if for just a little while. I invite you now to find a comfortable position to sit back and relax in. I invite you to take in a deep breath and release it slowly to clear your mind. I invite you to listen deeply to one who immersed herself in the natural world, who listened deeply and observed with exquisite attention the beautiful complexity of it all, and who, with grace and generosity of spirit, shared her experience with us. Our first poem, Mindful. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It is what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. Oh, good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made of grass.
Wild geese, you do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Praying. It doesn't have to be a blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot or a few small stones. Just pay attention. Then patch a few words together and don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice may speak.
We have a poet called Some Herons here, and I just want to emphasize that at the end, I think the reflections of the herons are referred to. A blue preacher flew toward the swamps in slow motion. On the leafy banks, an old Chinese poet, hunched in the white gown of his wings, was waiting. The water was the kind of dark silk that has silver lines shot through it when it is touched by the wind or is splashed upward. In a small, quick flower by the life beneath it. The preacher made his difficult landing, his skirts up around his knees. The poet's eye flared, just as a poet's eyes are said to do when the poet is awakened from the forest of meditation. It was summer. It was only a few moments past the sun's rising, which meant that the whole sweet day lay before them. They greeted each other, rumpling their gowns for an instant, and then smoothing them. They entered the water, and instantly 2 more herons, equally as beautiful, joined them and stood beneath them in the black polished water where they fished all day.
Hello, this is the alligator poem that Reverend Kathy mentioned earlier. I knelt down at the edge of the water, and if the white birds standing in the tops of the trees whistled any warning, I didn't understand. I drank up to the very moment it came, crashing toward me, its tail flailing like a bundle of swords slashing the grass, and the inside of its cradle-shaped mouth gaping and rimmed with teeth. That's how I almost died of foolishness in Florida. But I didn't. I leaped aside and fell, and it streamed past me, crushing everything in its path as it swept down to the water and threw itself in. And in the end, this isn't a poem about foolishness, but about how I rose from the ground and saw the world as if for the second time, the way it really is. The water, that circle of scattered glass, healing itself with a slow whisper and lay back with the black lit light of polished steel. And the birds in the endless waterfalls of the trees shook open the snowy pleats of their wings and drifted away, while for a keepsake and to steady myself, I reached out. I picked the wild flowers from the ground around me, blue stars and blood red trumpets on long green stems, for hours in my trembling hands that glittered like fire.
The summer day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And in Blackwater Woods, look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light and giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this: the fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it. And when the time comes to let it go, let it go.
I hope you were able to listen deeply to the words of Mary Oliver and the beautiful music performed by Janet Strumpus, and there find peace and solace, a refuge, if but for just a short time.
Now, please sing along, Spirit of Life, with the recording by Janet Strumpus. And now for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
As we leave this space, may the bonds we feel remain. May the words of this day continue to guide and steady us as we make our way. May the silence we held for each other keep us tethered to that place of calm, to that opening in our hearts that allows the grace of the world to continually flow in and speak. Go in peace, friends.
Our postlude is Song of India, performed by Janet Strumpus.
that concludes our service for today, folks.